All right, guys, welcome. If you are tuning in, my name is Adrian Ellison, and I am a connector for women who are healing from BII and breast implant illness, otherwise known as well as just women that are healing from explant surgery or any major surgery. This podcast is actually going to be really beneficial and powerful to you. So what I have done is I've created a network of really specialized practitioners. These people are the cream of the crop, top of the top that I could absolutely find. And the reason that I found them was because I went on a really deep healing journey for the last 10 years to heal my cellular health. And I went all over the world, all over the map to try to find people that could help me with my very unique problems, very complex problems. And over time, I was fortunate enough to come across people like my guest here today, Vince Pitstick. And what I'm doing here is just helping educate you guys about the solutions that are actually available to you. Although I know so many of you, if you're watching this, have probably already spent a lot of money or time or energy trying to understand what is my next step? Who am I supposed to work with? Who can actually help me? These were all questions that I had, along my journey. So I've introduced you to several of the practitioners that work with us. And today I'm going to be introducing you to one of our other practitioner partnerships, which is with a company that does some really incredible things around functional health and nutrition, chronic illness, fertility, a lot of autoimmune healing and stuff around the gut. A lot of women that are coming out of surgery have a lot of gut stuff because of the multitude of antibiotics that we're on. So today I'm here to introduce Vince Pitstick. He is one of the smartest human beings that I know and also a dear friend of mine. I've gotten to know you, over the last 6-ish months, and I just respect your work so much. And what you have built is something that I could only dream of really building. Yeah. The network that you have been able to build for people to get real solutions to really, really seemingly complex problems, but to you, they're actually quite simple. So, Vince, I just want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. Thank you for coming all the way from Florida and making this happen. Canceled podcasts, flights, all the things that we've been doing to get here, and we're here. So thank you, and I'd love for you just to introduce yourself.
I love supporting who I think are people stepping into their hidden heroes, and I think you're stepping into something where you said it. You might seem impossible to build what I've been able to build, but I think I think what we're seeing is someone stepping into it right now, and I want to validate you. That's why I'm here, because I think the mission that you're on is altruistic. It's worthy. And I think it's a space that needs more support. And I think you're on the verge because of your journey, you understand that healing isn't one variable. It's multiple variables, ever changing, ever evolving. And so there's got to be somebody that is a connector that can draw in these individuals of greatness around her, that can get these people all the answers you would need. For example, like the Cleveland Clinic, one of the reasons that people love the Cleveland Clinic is because you get a round table of practitioners, because they're like one of the one places in the world that understands that complex systems require people working on multiple systems at one time to then all of a sudden create the amazing outcomes. And you're recognizing that, and particularly on the topic that we are discussing today. That was my journey. So hello, everyone. Functional health coach Vince Pitstick. But I'm the founder of the Vital Health Network. It is a virtual fitness functional medicine. We call it FitMed. It's one of the first of its kind, where virtually you can get services from your doctor, your coach, your nutrition, your training, your functional medicine protocols, labs. Everything shows up at your door, and we're trying to deliver it as easy as any other online service, so that people can have complete care and then they're handheld through the process. And we always partner with people such as yourself and other clinics across the country in a 1-2 punch scenario. So that people get all the answers in one. Because a lot of times people, and especially when we talk about the BII community today, it's not that they don't do 1 or 2 things right. They're in this search and they're trying all these things. 1 or 2 of them was right, but it wasn't in the right order and for the right amount of time. And without that, a body cannot fully heal.
Yes.
That's the problem. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I really hope people pay attention, because they're going to hear some things they've probably never heard before. But it's based on clinical evidence after working with myself personally, over 55,000 people we've probably seen over between the practitioners that are at my university, doctors and coaches that learn our methods, our coaching methods, and then from our offices that we have. We've probably I've overseen over 7,000 BII cases. So I have a very large sample size and case study and then history and tracking over time the last 10 years this enemy we're going to just generally label for now breast implant illness.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to be having this conversation.
Yeah.
It has been a real journey and gift, to be able to alchemize my own personal journey. I had so much more than just BII. I was sick long before, really that was happening. And I was fortunate enough to have saline. And when my implants came out, they were relatively looking pretty good compared to a lot of the women that we see that are, having some of these other gummy bear brands and all the brands that are getting recalled and things like that right now. And one of the things that I really want to talk about today, and why I have you here and why I'm not calling in surgeons to have these conversations with me, at least not yet, until I find one who is so much more educated than just like on the specific surgery itself, is when women go to their surgeons and they're asking for next steps, and like those doctors for the most part do not have next steps. And there's, a reason for that. So one thing I want to just start off with is like, what is BII?
Yeah. So let's go. So I've been in the field now, starting in the nutrition and then clinical nutrition space now for about 18 years. And we obviously, like most people in my position, most of my career started in weight loss, right? And working with females that were having, that were trying to lose weight. And, even 18 years ago was kind of like the gym craze, PT craze, high protein, lots of training. The reason I'm sharing that with you is that a lot of women, when they start experiencing issues, it's mood and water retention and like starting to swell up and gain weight. So a lot of these women don't start at the endocrinologist or at the cardiologist or whoever. They end up with a nutritionist or a trainer or something, because we have 5 stages of change. One of the first ones is identification. Like, I identify certain things are going on with me and I'm not quite sure what it is. As you explained earlier though, and this is the history of, again, the thousands of histories we've done, we've never seen a BII case that didn't have a history like yours for the most part. There are a few, and that's why we need to classify, I think, the 3 different types here in a second. But they all have these histories. And so I started seeing this stuff many, many years ago because it showed up in their metabolisms often first. I think many people that are listening or watching will identify with what I'm talking about. So when we're trying to solve this problem, all of these similar immunological issues start popping up. So we've been tracking this unknown enemy, let's say, for at least 15 years. And we didn't know what it was, right? And, probably about 10 years ago, I think, would say 8, is when BII got established heavily. I would say is it in the social media world and people started identifying it. And so we've seen so many different variations and of this that when we talk about BII, and we're just going to say breast implant illness, we're really looking at what we're going to call, overarching, is an immunological upregulation or rejection, right, of a foreign body. That's what we're going to say. I look at it as an autoimmune syndrome or an autoimmune rejection of a foreign substance, a foreign body. This doesn't just happen with implants. It happens with mesh. It happens with all kinds of different implants we can put in our body. Less likely with titaniums and things that they put in knees and stuff like that. But because we've seen it with the same symptoms with all kinds of different implants, okay? So I look at it, I think the easiest way outside of the 3 that we can definitively really talk about, one is a direct, right, like infection that comes with implantation or a defective product, okay? I think there's direct illness. That's direct. Like there's mold on them. As you know, I don't want to go too far in the history, but they were using, manufacturing grade. They were not using medical grade for a long time. There's a lot of stuff that was going on. I think some of the new ones that are happening are a little less at risk of that, but we still have a large population that have implants that are well over 10 years old that are part of that era. That's kind of the early dark manufacturing era of implants. So you've got, one is direct infection from implantation or defective product. The second one I would say is a damaged implant. So it's one that's now, is either there's a perforation, a break, leakage. It's now outside of the capsular. You know, this stuff happens, and even happens now. Particularly happens a lot of women in fitness when they're training or whatever. And you've got that, which directly causes an immunological upregulation. So you've got that. And then the third one, though, and this is the one that's more common than ever now. The third one is there wasn't anything wrong with the implant. There isn't been damage to the implant. But yet we have all the same symptoms, like there's something going on with the implant. And yet when you go to any doctor, they're going to say nothing's wrong with you, right? Because they can't visibly see anything. And we can get into scanning and imaging where they make a lot of mistakes there. Maybe they don't notice how thick the capsular is getting, or, you know, there's a lot of issues that can happen. That one in particular is the one that's growing the most. And it's also what's sticking around even after explant. So this is what we're going to talk. And it predates sometimes the implant. That's what we saw. So these immunological upregulations were there before. We just didn't connect the dots. Then we get the implant. We've had them in usually 3, 4, 5 years. Usually you get to that 3 to 5, 6 mark. You start noticing more and more symptoms that keeps building up. And then all of a sudden you just feel like you're having 17 different battles going on. It's like, I've got hypothyroidism. I'm getting rashing, random hair shedding. I've got brain fog, fatigue. I'm swelling up. Now the same pizza is making me gain weight. I'm only 35 years old. I'm only 42 years old. Why is this happening? And then they get a bunch of other diagnoses along the way. It's not BII at first. No. It starts out like you're fine. And then the second one's eat less, move more. And then the third one's hypothyroidism. And then the fourth one is like a hormone imbalance, right? Because it really messes with the endocrine system. Or I probably should stick gut issues in there and then hormone issues. It probably goes thyroid, gut, sex hormone if there had to be an order. And again, we've been tracking it for so long that what that really is think of it like an autoimmune syndrome that was either triggered by, or we'll say co-triggered by, because sometimes the trigger had already happened and now the implant just being in there is irritating it. But I can tell you definitively now, and I fight this vigorously online, I want everyone to think of BII in general, especially a lot of the new stuff that's happening. It is an autoimmune condition of the implant, or of a foreign body. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. And it just speaks so much to why you're so interested in this community as a whole, because you're really, and this is one of the things that I keep nailing into this community. The BII community tends to be really like, get your implants out right now. That is the only option that you have. And like, if you don't get implants, it's so terrible. And it's just a lot of fear mongering and a lot of like victimhood. And one of the things that's really important for me to create as a culture for what we're building with Healing After Explant is for women to feel like they have choices and to feel like that they're not going to be funneled into something, because the truth is sometimes surgery is not a good option, especially if you're in a very specific time of your life. And I do want to just talk about something that you mentioned a second ago, which was kind of understanding that there are specific steps that need to be taken in order. And I think sometimes women get backed into a corner where they feel like their only option is taking their implants out right away, and that's their first step. But what I see on the back end, because I have practitioners that are treating women who are honestly, excuse my French, but so fucked up by the time they reach us that they've spent $80,000 like Amber Sears, or $200,000 like our client Paige, and have not found anything that could really move them. And yes, there's a somatic piece to that, which we're incorporating. And yes, there is a big time scar tissue piece, which we're incorporating. But what is the stack and what is the order in which things should go? And one thing that I know that you and I have talked about that I really resonate with is, if you're putting somebody into a highly traumatic experience such as surgery, and do not get me wrong, surgery is incredibly traumatic on the system. The body keeps a score. It remembers everything. The nervous system, proprioception gets shut off. Without proprioception, we have no idea where we're at in time and space. That becomes really difficult for our entire system, even including the endocrine system, to communicate as a whole. And the body is not separate. It is a whole ecosystem that's communicating at a time. So for me, what we're trying to do with this specific episode is help women understand that your next step, if you are somebody who's experiencing the 17 different symptoms, or you are bloating and you're even in the early stage, before you go hire that dietitian that's going to, do your macros and do all of those things, the next step is maybe really working with one of your practitioners in the network to heal the immune system, so that the immune system knows what it is trying to send and how to create nutrients for the rest of the body. So can you just talk about why women should look at working with one of your practitioners and doing like a proper, I wouldn't even call it a detox protocol.
Yeah.
It's so much more sophisticated than that as a first step.
Yeah, let's dive in. So the first controversial thing that I'm going to say is that probably 40% of at least the cases that come into us, I'd say even closer to 60 that we see, that think they have BII, maybe the implant is now a secondary aggravant, but there's this whole new class, and people can look this up. We classified it OID about 8 years ago, but there's new literature like in the Journal of Internal Medicine of IMIDs, immune-mediated inflammatory diseases. This is where you can get triggered. The thing that scared us the most when we were looking at this, that we were confused about, was why is it that long hauler COVID, and then a chronic Lyme, chronic EBV, BII, autoimmune disorders, all have the same symptoms? Why do they all have the same symptoms? And then everybody keeps chasing the initial thing because that's how human beings look at something. Like long hauler COVID's not COVID. It's your immune system's after effect. So when the body gets really triggered, when there's a big immunological shift. This is also why a lot of menopausal women have the same condition without implants. This is why we backed up from judging anything as BII now, because it's like when people don't have an answer, they default to, and they hear some of their other friends, and they kind of get together with those groups and get confirmation bias to it. But because we see this issue in menopause, what happens in menopause is you get dysregulated Th1 and 2 cells. These are your active T and B cell lymphocytes and M1 macrophages. They're the one that cause a lot of inflammation. They get upregulated, and then they're a genetic ability to go through something called apoptosis. I don't want to get too complicated, but this is the work we've been doing with our clinical team, our research team for a while. They can't destroy themselves. Most of your cells, you're shedding thousands of cells a day, okay? Larger macromolecules, though, sometimes get denatured, as the telomeres shorten and there's cellular damage. Cellular damage can happen over a big infection, long hauler, EBV, trauma. If you're having chemical and emotional at the same time problems, which happens for a lot of people, it can create immunological imbalances that now these cells are really pro-inflammatory. They're supposed to end their life cycle. They don't. They just hang out in the body, and they're called senescent cells. This is a real thing. It's called immunosenescence. It's very real. There's lots of data on this. It's not talked about. If you want to go down another wormhole on YouTube or whatever, you're more than, I would try to probably not Google search at 2 a.m. anymore. What's going on with you? Because you're already in that fear and worry and feeling safe, and it's just going to go further. But I want you to understand that why are all these women having the same issues, and not all of them have implants, and all of them have different trigger points. So some trigger was menopause, some trigger was EBV, some trigger was Lyme, some trigger was BII. This is the problem. The problem is that once you've had a trigger, the thing that started it isn't the thing causing it now. So the problem is that these traumas of going through surgery and stuff like that or whatever, the immune system gets upregulated, and now it's a secondary comorbidity. So we no longer assume anything about implants at all. We work the immune system, gut, detox pathways, open everything up. And if it doesn't totally clear up by working the immune system first, then the likelihood of it being the implant, because we had so many people at first, we were that way too. Everybody explant now. And it did not go well. Mm-hmm. People were not ready. Their systems weren't open. They weren't prepared for all the release of toxins and bacteria exposure or mold that comes from the procedure. Majority of women were getting continued issues anyway, so they feel better for 3 months, like getting rid of a gallbladder, and then all of a sudden you have a new attack, right? So the problem is whether the implant was the direct cause or not, and we're finding that it probably isn't. It was just an added aggravant, because when we look at the histories, these people already were usually typically chronic dieters. They had been on birth control, Accutane, antibiotics. There has been a buildup of a 10-year history. Implants get inserted somewhere in the middle of it, and then they get named the bad guy. Now, it doesn't mean that in a lot of other cases it isn't the direct cause. Mm-hmm. But in almost every functional issue, you have like secondary morbidities or secondary causal relationships. It's easier for the human mind to go, implants made me sick, bad implants, that's it. get them out, I'm okay.
Yep.
And that's logical. Unfortunately, that's not how the body biologically typically works. And so now we don't come in assuming that anymore. Now we have to do all the other things to calm the immune system down, see if we can restore them to balance, or even if they're not, let's say we do get them there and they still want them out, great. Now they go get the explant and they respond so much better. They don't go, some people were going through a year of the immune system got worse. Mm-hmm. And then some people got better for 3 months and then it crept all back.
Yes, I've seen it all.
Right? And so we know now, it's like, no, okay, we're dealing with an immunological issue. Implants, let's just set it. We understand that we're going to look at it as one of the triggers, but now you've impaired detox pathways, your microbiome is off, your hormones are all over. Like, it's just one factor at this point. We need to deal with the immune system, and how do we de-escalate that? You work through a systematic process. If you just try random things here and there, you're never going to get it, because the immune system is responsible for 80% of your daily production of inflammation. So that's why a lot of these women are like, I switched this diet, I did this diet, I got off this. They all do it. And then they're down to this many calories because they're food sensitive and everything like that. And they're like, how can this be possible? It's because your immune system keeps growing and gets more gnarly. And you think it's the food, but food's only responsible for about 20% of your daily inflammation. So even if you change that, you don't get below the threshold of feeling it. Mm-hmm. And so it just continues to escalate. This is how this happens, and we've discovered this truth. As uncomfortable as it may be for certain people who have developed a narrative about what they have and what the solution is, I am not here to bring conflict. I'm here to bring options and potential solutions and clarity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And there's going to be such a wide variety of women listening. Some people are going to send this to women who haven't even gotten implants yet, and they're trying to convince them, like, do not get implants. And, you know, maybe that woman is hearing this and she's saying, well, maybe it's not the implants. And, you know, one thing I always like to say is that unless you plan on getting implants put in every 10 years, and we're going to talk about that 10-year mark here in a little bit, but I got a couple things to go first. Yeah. Unless you're planning on getting implants put in every 10 years, and then, again, the significant amount of trauma that happens, especially to the nervous system, and just the way that scar tissue doesn't really communicate with the body and messes up the flow of fascia, which is the superhighway for really all communication and our body's ability to understand it where it's at in space and time, like I said, through proprioception. So there's women that are going to be listening to this that someone that loves them is like, hey, listen to this before you get implants. And so that's, you know, that's one woman. And then we're going to have women who are, unfortunately, the woman that I would like to get this podcast the most would be obviously a woman before she gets implants, but a woman that has implants before she gets them taken out, so that we can make sure that going into surgery, she has all the things that she really needs, so that her healing journey is a lot quicker. Because on the back end, man, I'm seeing atrocities. I'm seeing women who are just so broken and so hopeless, and they don't even really have the like empowerment feeling of like, I want to continue healing myself. They spent so much money and they're so confused and they're so lost. And then of course there's going to be the woman who's listening to this. It's like, fuck, I definitely wish I had gotten my hands on this episode and this interview before I had, you know, gone through my surgery, because I still have 50% of the symptoms that I had before and all of that. So one of the things I just want to say to, you know, the audience that's going to be watching this is that no matter where you're kind of at on this journey or why you're listening to this interview, just understand that it's exactly the way that it should be right now. But if you have not addressed the immune system, that this is really bringing light to that aspect, that no matter whether you're deciding to work with another practitioner and do parasite cleansing, which is something that this community really loves to dive into, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, well, there's bad stuff inside, so I got to get the bad stuff from the inside to the outside. Yeah. And that's not really how the body works when it is in a holding pattern. And holding patterns come from chronic stress. When the body's in a state of stress, it doesn't have a need to let go. It's really more in self-preservation mode. So, you know, I think that's a lot of, if we were to simplify what autoimmune really is in a way. Yeah. But what I do want to talk about is specifically to address the women who have had implants for longer than 10 years. Because I know we talked about this too, that a woman could have saline implants and have really no issues. And then that 10-year mark comes around, and, you know, whether it's the stress load from having that implant, the immune system attacking that, whether it's the capsules that, you know, kind of do tend to, and they are scar tissue, they tend to fuse onto bone and create musculoskeletal issues. If you're starting to breathe shallow, overall, the filtration and the aeration of your body, it goes down. And so it's like this small, tiny compounding effect of all of these little things that over a 10-year period of time lead to a downfall. So I'd love for you just to talk about that 10-year mark.
So if we want to talk, so we have found, because I'm just going to give some numbers, and I want to support a woman in any decision that she wants to make, but I want her to have all decisions available at her disposal. That's what I want, right? And whatever consent. It is, right, whatever she wants. Because what I don't necessarily like is what's happening now is like, You walk into a doctor and go, I think I have BII. Okay, do you want them out? Okay, do you want them back in? They're just making money both ways, right? What we do in our process is when we take our deductive approach, as we get closer, if we can't eliminate the problem, then we know to a high degree of probability that when you remove those implants, one, you're going to have a 10 times better experience, but you're going to get the desired effect of getting them out that you intended for, and then have a great experience after, and it's unlikely that symptoms will keep coming up later, or if they do, it's relatively modifiable, right? Of all the cases that we've done since we stopped assuming explant up front and just having everyone do that, I'm going to tell you 50% of the people that come in to see us leave the implants in and feel amazing, okay? Now, I'm not saying that that's what anyone should do. I'm just saying that some do that, and it's okay. But what we had another group do, because we were trying to figure out what's causing more of the triggering of the immune system. It's absolutely, we believe, the capsular, because we've had many women now go get a capsulectomy, or they've had replacements done after going through the program and then have most of the capsular cut out to just thin tissue left over. And most of those women right now it's early. I don't have large data sets on that, so I don't, because we'd like to know exactly what it is to give people more clarity. So we're watching and observing these. It would seem very much so because of scar tissue, the immune system, as something key stays in there, begins to collect on surfaces, biofilms, begin to collect on and around that capsular. So every year, that undead tissue kind of collects more and more cells. And that's why you start to see more of a pro-inflammatory effect, because those cells sit there with a little bit of inflammation that they're releasing every day. And that's why you're seeing that 10-year mark is so important, right? And because it's building up this because when the immune system is active and it's looking at something, it's going through phagocytosis. It's moving around, it's looking, and when it's active, it's a little bit of pro-inflammatory. So if it kind of hangs out in a spot for a while, that kind of can trigger systemic upregulated response. Think of it kind of like maybe, I don't know, a food allergy of some kind or something like that.
But constant.
But constant, because they're always in there.
Yeah.
So, to keep it really safe, we would love to say 8 years. If you're gonna keep them in, we would love to see 8 years, because we see really good.
And capsules out if you take them out.
I'm not prepared to say that yet, because if you're getting them out at 8 years, I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
But
the capsule, if it stays in the body, it still would be collecting things over time. Yeah?
I agree with you. I want it. So this is where we are not having. Every doctor we try to work with, they're very resistant. Mm-hmm. We want them to test them. So take a sample, send it off, right? Trim it down, scrape it, trim it down if you're going to use it. It's just a lot more on the woman. It's a lot more trauma to the procedure to take a capsulectomy, right? Yeah, they've got a new mesh that they can wrap it with. They do. And you can also, a lot of them, they come back thicker. There's been immune activity, because that extra scar tissue or that tissue is a response from inflammation. So it's active. But a lot of doctors will deny all that. They'll go, it's fine. We even have doctors say, I'll do all that for you, and then get in there and go, we didn't do any of that. And now it's done, and there's nothing you can do, right? So I have I have a growing disdain. I know there's some great doctors coming out of the mix of this, but right now where we're at, I have a pretty strong disdain for a lot of the medical practitioners in that side of the field, because they believe this is all hocus pocus. Even the ones that will do the explants, they're just doing it for the money. They don't believe anything's going on. And so, but what we've seen is if they can scrape down the capsular, these people seem to have a better response. We're waiting and we're collecting more information all the time, right? Just so everybody has all the information, because the maintenance for a lot of these women, if they get them out, right, or they leave them in, if they've not done any work before, some of the work after is still the same.
Yeah, I'd love to actually talk about something that's not even really as much related to surgery, the actual surgery itself, which, by the way, if you have not had an opportunity to check out the podcast that I did with Amber Sears and Kendra, or any of the podcasts I've done with Kendra, where she really talks about what happens to the body in the process of surgery, what scar tissue really does to the body from a fascial and nervous system perspective, I really highly recommend checking that out, because again, surgery, although in this country seems like it's really easy, it's day in, day out, you're out of there. There's so much that goes into it. And so, check out the information that we have on scars. But what I'd like to just talk about is just the antibiotics. I'd love to address how women, when they're going in and they're getting these surgeries and they're coming out and they're taking these antibiotics, which is very, very common thing that's happening, or just taking antibiotics in general regularly. When you go to a doctor, something's wrong with you, you're taking antibiotics. And one of the things that I know the antibiotics do, because I was on antibiotics pretty much every month as a kid. I was really sick, and then I had antibiotic resistance and all of that. I'd just love for you to talk a little bit about what you see with women who are coming kind of from that space, and then y'all's process within the protocols of how you're rebuilding the gut. Because like you said, gut comes first. It's such a, first step. It's the second brain. It's where all of our serotonin's produced. So what I see is that women who have pretty severe depression typically have an immediately directly related gut response. And then they're taking things like probiotics, but again, their body's not really sloughing off that excess stuff. Maybe they have biofilm, maybe they do have parasites, but the next step is absolutely not to go in and kill parasites when their system and their immune system cannot handle the toxic load. So can you just talk about that anyway?
So the first thing that we're going to say is we've seen so many cases now, and no matter where someone's at, even no matter if they're still having symptoms after, because my heart breaks for the person that just dove all in, has the explant, nervous system doesn't calm down, so they're still in fear, they're still in searching, they're going to the Facebook groups, it's a trauma sharing, it's not a healthy, it's just a circle for the next thing, and it becomes addictive. So now I'm paying attention to too many symptoms. I've got disassociation where I'm attributing what causes what, and I'm off, and I'm making lifestyle decisions based on that. And I've gone down that road for 5 or 7 years, and it's led to nothing. So I have a distrust for everyone now.
Yes.
So I don't feel safe, and I'm alone, really, even when I'm in a crowded room. These are the women that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that's why when they come into us, we say no more of this. We have, anybody listening, we have a guarantee that no matter where you're at or what you're dealing with, we can get you significant resolution within 12 weeks, or we work with you for free till we do. Because what they need is not more programs. They need guarantees.
Yes.
They need outcomes. They need someone to say, this is where it stops. I know everyone's giving you all these opinions, and this is just one more, but we've done so many cases. We know we got this, no matter which way it goes. That's why I'm defining it so many different ways, because we pay close attention, because we understand underlying the whole thing is the immune system. And so where's 80% of the immune system? The gut. Prior to the gut, though, we've gotten so good with BII, we're doing gene tests on every single woman and every one of them that's having this issue. We're looking at their gene profiles. Then we're looking at what are the similarities, what genes, MTHFR, FUT2, MTRR, COMT, MAOA, and just a couple others. So we know gene profiles, and we're prepared probably in the next year and a half to say, hey, get a genetic screen. This is going to tell you about your risk factor a little bit more to have something related to it, because there's still a huge amount of women out there that are just fine, okay? I don't want to demonize and scare everybody, but there's also a lot that have been left lacking in them where they're at. And we just want people to be safe, right? I don't want to make a moral judgment on what it is for you. If it adds value to your life, as long as it isn't where your value comes from, it's a whole nother world. Some people are going to hear this and they're going to hate me. Because they've gotten, on one side, they're so anti now because it's become the identity.
I brought you here for a reason, and I didn't bring other people here for a reason, because there is a more transparent and well-rounded conversation to have here. And there are going to be women who come to us that really, really need help. And if we have that culture around them that's like, ew, if you're doing implanting, then we're judging you. I'm just not here for that. I'm here to bring resolve for people. I don't give a shit in what direction that is, true resolve for people. And I'm not here to again, base that moral judgment. I do want to ask a question.
So you're going into real quick. So the gene pathways are detox pathways that when the immune system gets upregulated, it puts stress on those genes, like MTHFR. Immune upregulation is really one of the controlling factors for your lymphatics and your detox pathways. What we see is, though, but that's where it ties right into the gut, okay? So if you have gut susceptibility genetically, and when we get into the gut, you end up seeing that as the immune system gets overactive, you get suppression. This is why, so here's the problem, when we don't think upstream. So people keep chasing parasites, or they keep chasing hypothyroidism, and they keep chasing, because they get a name. I just need a name. Give me the name of the bad guy. I need someone to fight, right? Give me the name so I can go chase it. And then we get stuck on a diagnosis that is not the root, but is a secondary, tertiary morbidity. And we're chasing the wrong enemy. Because the reason parasite cleanses or things like that come up over and over and over again is because when you have an imbalanced immune system, what happens is your body's really good at defending maybe some bacterias and stuff. These women, I'll give you the histories, never get cold or flu. They'll feel sick. They'll feel like maybe they got a cold, but their immune system's overactive and it tires you. So you just feel fatigued so bad, you're like, oh, I'm sick. But you're not. You don't have a fever. You've never gotten cold or flu, and every one of them is going to listen to this. How do I know you? I've not met you. I just told you something about yourself. Because they all have that. They all have a genetically upregulated immune system that would be really good in Paleolithic times. Like most women with BII don't get cold or flu, but are sick all the time. How is that? Right? You could go in and be like the emotional support person for children with Ebola and give them hugs and not be in a hazmat suit and not get it. Many of these women, COVID from a flu perspective and fever was like a breeze. They didn't even know they had it, or they got back pain, or they got something else because they have an upregulated immune system. So what happens is then you get suppression in other places. So we'll think about TH1 or TH2. Think about initiation or resolution. If you have a bunch of initiation cells, which are causing all the inflammation, which is why you're swollen all the time, brain fog, your metabolism slowing down, you're going to see your 2-hour postprandial blood sugars are all over the place because it has to produce sugar to feed those lymphocytes from being active. The TH2 or the cleaner cells, M2 macrophages, those are the ones that get into viruses, parasites, UTIs, upper respiratory infections. So you'll get chronic infections, but from places from suppression. Mm. So like the things, you're a donut. So the things out in the hole of the donut, like UTI, like gut, like your sinuses, right? Rhinosinusitis or whatever will be chronic, but yet you'll never get the cold or flu. Or you'll never get because it's an imbalance. Mm. Once you have an imbalance, it doesn't matter what you do to change the diet or do whatever. If you don't work the immune system, you're going to go on forever thinking it is the name of whatever name you were given, and you chase it to the bitter ends. And apparently one life is all we have. And I just don't want people doing that because we have an answer. There is a solution between partnerships and one is working the physical component and then working the autonomic component, right? And I know that's a lot of the great work that you guys do and all the other things you do. That's why it's such a great 1-2 punch between us. But I want people to understand if you don't balance the immune system back out, you're going to fight 50 battles and you don't realize it's all one thing.
Yes. Okay, cool. So obviously if you're listening to this and you're like, I want in on this. I want to understand this more. I want to understand myself more. One of the things that happens with women, specifically the women who already went into surgery, they came out, they still have all these symptoms. They've already worked with a detox specialist. They've done multiple rounds of parasite cleansing. They're in this place where they're just listening to this and they're just like, fuck, I just wish I would have known this before. I would just want to say, like, reminding you that this team has a guarantee that as much money as you've already spent, I understand that. So I know where you're coming from. But one of the things that I just want to help for the women who have not yet gone ahead and spent that $100,000, the $50,000, and maybe that are going to work with a practitioner, whether it's you or somebody else, is like, what are a good couple questions to ask a practitioner that they're going through to know whether or not they're actually going to really be able to help you. And so I think there's like a couple things. Like I've worked with so many different practitioners and they have a lot of language, right? So you've got a practitioner that knows all about remineralization, that knows how to do help with the thyroid and adrenals, the person who knows how to do parasite cleansing, the person who knows how to do all of these things and talk the talk, but ultimately doesn't have a conversation about the immune system. So is there a couple of questions that you would say like, hey, whether you're going to work with us or not, and I'm also going to ask a question about women who cannot afford to work with you, like like a couple things because you have a supplement company as well. So could you just touch on like, how do you know if somebody really knows their shit? And I know you guys know it, but if they're working like right now, if somebody's working with someone right now or they just signed a contract, maybe they could pick up the phone and call that person and just get clarity on whether they're actually going to be able to help them.
The first is when you go into a doctor's office, let's say, and this happens with naturopaths and a lot of our functional community. When you walk into the office, they already fundamentally believe the use of something called inductive reasoning is how you solve problems. And this is how inductive reasoning works. In an acute scenario, it works really well. I go in, I have a gunshot wound. The doctor looks at the gunshot wound, goes, that's a gunshot wound. That's my theory. So I'm going to test the theory and provide a procedure and then test the theory and see the result. That's also how they do it with medicine. They try to figure out what the diagnosis is. They got to get a name for it. And then there's a treatment for that, and they're going to test that theory. And they keep testing theories. And that's what a lot of people get. Well, it's probably this. That's the protocol. We'll see how it works for 3 months. That's called inductive reasoning. Okay. When you have something like BII or anything that is immunological, it is not found in one system. It is multi-system, multiple systems. There's 11 systems of the body. Usually when you've had something past 6 months, it gets into something from acute to chronic. Chronic systemic pro-inflammatory issues affect multiple systems. The endocrine system, the gastrointestinal system, the lymphatic system. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you can't solve that inductively. Because if I just do something for the GI, that's not going to work. That's why if somebody goes in somewhere and it's like, all right, looks like it's probably in your gut. Let's do a parasite cleanse. You already know they've got it wrong because it's a systemic problem. They have to have a deductive process. So steps, we know that there's multiple variables in this process. So we're going to work a process that works all of the different systems that are involved in a process. So if I go to a doctor and they're like, looks like you have acid reflux. Here's a PPI. I already know from that conversation right there that you and I are fundamentally different about how we solve problems because that was inductive and not deductive. Because what it should have been more like is, okay, I think a big part of this is acid reflux, but I know what's involved in that. I know stress, diet, food, right? I know that the tissue lining is probably really, really irritated, right? And there's also maybe foods that are triggering it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, make sure everyone, we will always do diet, lifestyle, stress. We're going to work the tissue. We're going to work the GI tract. And then if that doesn't do it, then we'll put you on a medication. Do you see what I just did? Mm-hmm. Steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, knowing that the autonomic nervous system working stress is involved in why. So I'm working the multiple systems. It would be like going in the backyard and I have a shitty lawn. Right? Can I cuss on here? Okay. I got a shitty lawn and my neighbor's lawn looks amazing. If the neighbor goes, it's just this one seed, go ahead and throw that on there. Good luck. You're going to have the same shitty lawn. So then why do we allow that in our practitioners? Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's not about their licenses. It's about their wisdom. Are you wise? I don't care if you took a lot of tests and have initials behind your name. Can you guide me? Guidance requires wisdom. So how you solve problems is where wisdom is, right? And the body is a complex system that requires a deductive process, right? Which is why Cleveland Clinic works better than your local primary care. Yeah. So that's what I look for, those hints. Are you wise? I see that you're educated. I see you got a lab coat on and you look like a doctor. You got a stethoscope around your neck or whatever it is that you do. But are you really wise, and should I trust that logic and go down this path with you? Mm-hmm. Most naturopaths, the same thing. They'll spend $10,000 on labs, throw one protocol at you for all the stuff, and then put you on a generalized diet. No. Someone's got to hold your hand through a deductive process, and that's when your success rate gets into the 90s. So I already know if someone isn't working my diet with me, if someone isn't working with me in a coaching scenario, then I know I'm not deductively working a process and I'm not really interested.
Totally.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so I have one more question for you, but before that, I just want to say for those of you that are listening that are like, yes, I really want to work with one of the practitioners in this network to do all of the systems and the functions that we just talked about, get all the testing done, work with all the different resources that Vince and I have been talking about today. There's a couple different things you can do. One is you can just visit us at healingafterexplant.com. That way you can get on the wait list. Somebody will contact you. You can also just go to our Instagram, simple Healing After Explant, no dashes, no dots, none of that. And you can DM us Detox, and we will immediately send you over to connect with somebody on your team. So one of the great things is if you are interested in working one-on-one with one of these practitioners, it's a completely free consultation. You know, Tamisha, she's just been absolutely awesome.
Incredible.
Shout out to
like
Tamisha. Yeah, your team is phenomenal, and I'm so excited to be partnered with you. This means a lot to me, and this conversation was just absolutely incredible. And right now, we've given a lot of information for women to understand, like, this is probably my next step, kind of no matter where they are at, which is really why we partnered with you, is you are going to be the front end of what we're creating as a culture, so that women, by the time they come to us, we're not having to clean up so much of the mess that was created from things that were beyond BII and beyond implants, right? But let's just really briefly give a little bit of support for the women who are just not in a position to be able to afford your services, even my services. I'd love for you to talk about, maybe a couple of your favorite products that you guys sell through the supplement line, and just how doing a supplement protocol can help them for prepping either for surgery or after as well.
I'm never going to tell a woman that's dealing with these issues, I'm not going to say one product. I'm going to give her a process.
Great.
So we have courses that are self-paced that also we have support in the community. So like our team of Vital Coaching is made up of over 60 different, it's our dietitians, doctors, health coaches, all of us in our community. We know many people, although while we have great pricing worked out for things and payment plans, should that not work, it doesn't matter. I've literally built courses that will take them through the first step of it and then a second step. So for people that are mild or moderate can get some significant progress, right? And then keep trying to run the process on their own with us in the community. We're in our community doing trainings every week. We're there to support you. There's other people going through the process in there of all kinds of things. I mean, we work on everything. The rare and unexplained is all I do. That we have a 95% success rate on everything that's people have seen 12 to 16 practitioners, because we know that the immune system, we're asking the right question finally, so we're getting the right answer. And it's this immunosenescence, IMID. You get those cells out of somebody's body, the hot coals go away, all the symptoms go away because you're stepping on the root of the problem, right? Well, but there's steps to that. There isn't one product. So there's no way in hell I'm going to tell you one product. Because I'm not the problem, right? I want to be part of the solution, right? There's some great products that we do use, but we want it in a process, right? So we have courses, like our Flush program was one of the first one that I designed, and now our new one coming out, our Pure Fast program, which is a fast feasting schedule to help get rid of some of the stuff that's in there. And you can take them back to back, and also you can buy one-offs with our coaches for like $50, so you can keep working the process and really stay closer to the budget.
It's a great price.
And then our medical team's in there too to see you. So like you can just get in our app, Vital Health Collective. You can even download it now, the app, and just get some freebies and ask questions in there.
And you guys provide great discounts for testing, like what is genetic testing, gut testing, things like that. So
you can buy the test, and then just for $75, our top dietitians will meet with you and work through it with you and give you some of the next steps. So we give so many little steps to get you in the process. If I give you a product over a process, I'm part of the problem.
Totally. Yeah, thank you for that answer. That's really beautiful, and I really appreciate your transparency and just like all of your incredible knowledge. So again, we're going to end this conversation. I feel like there's like nothing more to even be said. My brain is on fire. I love it. I just like, it lights me up. Again, if you want to reach out to me, you can email me directly, info@healingafterexplant.com, or just healingafterexplant.com to get on our wait list, to look at any of our events, to look at our network of practitioners that are going to be helping women that are healing from BII, breast implant illness, just coming out of surgery. Even if you're not having an explant surgery, but you've had a highly traumatic surgery, which would be like emergency C-sections, things like that are going on in your life. We would love to help you and share resources with you. Vince is going to be an absolutely great resource. So please reach out to us. You can also just DM us on Instagram, Healing After Explant, DM us Detox, so that I know specifically that you were watching this episode and that you want more information. And I just look forward to continuing to serve this community in the future. Thank you guys for watching.
All right.